What do you do if the activities you do all the time are what's flaring up your body? How do you navigate this, and how can you make sure your body is ready for those activities that you do all the time? That's exactly what we want to talk with you about on this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast. We're going to cue our introduction and dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Schoenberg. We're your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we're discussing this idea of how do you navigate doing daily activities that are flaring up your body, the things that you do all the time. Maybe it's you playing tennis, or you're playing pickleball, or you're playing golf, or it's the stuff that you do on a consistent basis, and that's the stuff that is flaring up your body, not the one-off, long run that you went to, or, the time that you helped a friend move or anything like that. It's the stuff that you're doing regularly. How do you navigate this? How do you make sure that your body is able to tolerate those things? Because more than likely, if you're doing them all the time, they are something that you enjoy doing. So we want to make sure that you can keep doing them without them wreaking havoc on your body. And we want to let you know that if you want to start taking action on what we're talking about today, this is exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schoenberg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques. So all you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to our website, www.matschoenberg.com. Click the big green button that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. All right, so this idea of how do you navigate this situation that, quite frankly, a lot of people find themselves in. Yeah, like sometimes our body flares up because we shoveled snow and we haven't shoveled snow in quite some time. Or, we moved the Christmas lights and we haven't done that in quite some time. Or there was this kind of one-off incident of something that was out of the blue for us, and all of a sudden our body is not feeling well. But most of the time, what we find is it's stuff that people are doing on a regular basis. That is part of their routine. That is part of their day. That is part of the activities that they enjoy, whether it's a specific sport or just, the things around their house that they're doing day after day. Those are the things that are actually flaring up their body. So how do we navigate making sure that we're able to keep doing those things while also kind of tuning up our body in the process to make sure we can handle those things?
That's right. And Charlie, what the most frustrating part is, not only you hit it where you're saying, hey, if you do it all the time, it means you probably kind of like it. But you've probably done it before and it did flare you up. And then this random time it did flare you up. And you're like, well, what? How come, I've played tennis 50 times and now, there's one time when I hit the ball in this one spot, now I have like this shoulder issue going on. Well, a lot of exercise and movement is not just about your repetition and practice of the exercise. A big player that a lot of people don't recognize is the state of your body going into that thing. And so, we have great days and we have bad days, and we have days where your body feels more ready for action and days that your body is less ready for action, and days when you go to golf right after a really stressful day at work versus you go to golf after getting a great night's sleep and a great nutritious breakfast and a great workout prior or something like that, And so I'm highlighting these because these are different states that our body enters in different activities. So even though the activity is the same, I don't know any one human that enters every activity in their day in the same state each time. And so especially if you are jumping into an activity that maybe you've done 1,000,000 times, but your body is extra depleted at that time, or there's some tweak that maybe you are aware of or you're not aware of going on in your body. So our body is constantly orchestrating things in our awareness and not in our awareness. And so a lot of times these flare-ups that you get when you played golf or you gardened, even though you've done those so many times, but that one time it flared you up, is probably mostly dependent on the state of your body going into it. So this brings us to, okay, well, how do we start working with changing the state of our body and getting it to a better place so that we're less likely to flare up when we do the activities that we love? So the first thing is going to be, you've got to start getting some muscle activation techniques, especially if you're listening to this and you're already flared up. Find your local MAT practitioner and get on their table. Make sure that they start working on you, because this is going to be the most potent thing for changing the state of your muscles.
You're absolutely right, Julie. This is going to be the most potent thing. And the reason why it's going to be the most potent thing is, well, there's a number of reasons, but the one that I really want to highlight today is because it is going to assess and address the issues in your body independent of the symptoms that you're feeling. And why this is so important is because when we think about the state of our body, it's really easy to understand the extremes of like the day that you were deathly ill and could barely get out of bed versus a day that you were like super energized all day and felt like superhuman, right? And so we can understand that there are those two extremes, but the reality is most of our days we live on a continuum, a spectrum between one of those two extremes. And so there are so many variables that go into how our body is performing and how our body feels and functions, independent of the symptoms that we are experiencing. And so all of those things really have a large influence on the readiness of our body when we go into a physical activity, when we're going to go exert ourselves. And even though if the physical activity is exactly the same as it was last week and the week before and last month and the month before and everything like that, based on where we are on that continuum between deathly ill and superhuman, will determine, how our body responds to doing that physical activity. So I say all of that because we need a measure that is not just how's your body feeling to determine whether or not we're like truly ready for the physical activity that we're about to do, or to like, give some like insurance for our body of like, okay, yeah, my body is prepared for this activity. And muscle activation techniques can provide that because MAT is going to look at addressing the muscles that aren't working well, that more than likely you are unaware aren't working well. Okay, you are unaware of these muscles that aren't contracting well, that there's this, your brain and your muscles aren't talking well. It's, yes, there are symptoms that can go along with muscle inhibition and muscles not working well. A lot of the times though, it is relatively asymptomatic, especially in the earlier stages. And that is actually, when it comes to doing activities, when it can be the most dangerous, because you'll go into these activities being like, oh yeah, my body, I felt good, maybe not superhuman, but definitely not deathly ill. And all of a sudden it's like, and then my shoulder flared up, or, oh, I got this tweak in my back, or, I did something, to my knee. And like, I don't know, because, I wasn't feeling anything weird, going in. It's like, yeah, these muscle inhibitions that are these inhibited muscles that ultimately result in the injuries and everything like that, they largely go undetected until they become bigger issues. And so muscle activation techniques can go and identify where these inhibited muscles are, this muscle inhibition is within your system, get those muscles working better. So even though symptomatically you're doing okay right now, you get up off the table and you're like, oh, I'm definitely closer to superhuman. I am way, way closer to superhuman now than I was when I got on the table, even though you didn't feel bad getting on the table in the first place.
That's right. And that is like the biggest reason why using MAT is going to be the best way, especially if you're flared up, to get you back to baseline, but also prevent this type of stuff from coming up when you're, like Charlie was saying, it's especially confusing when you're like, I was feeling like decent, like not that bad, and I went to tennis, or I went to golf, or I went to do my gardening, or I went to whatever activity you're doing. You're less likely to flare up because the state of your system is higher. The efficiency of your muscles is higher. And so it's less close to that line of breakdown, right? That barrier of like, okay, how much stress or force or exercise can my body handle until it goes into that breakdown mode or that flare-up mode. Now, the second thing that we want you focusing on when you're navigating, regular activities or common activities in your day that seem to either regularly or infrequently flare you up is to start working to get your body physically further away from that breakdown point with your exercise. So muscle activation techniques is amazing at making sure muscles are online, that they're receiving the proper signal, and so that function is staying proper and efficient. But we also need to practice your body's exertion and conditioning and endurance and strength level and ability to handle forces. A lot of people stay active, but they never actually exercise. And so we want to encourage you to continue to do your weight training using the 4 Exercise for Life principles. But what this does is it teaches your body that, hey, we can handle high levels of force. And so even on the days when you're feeling subpar, your body's level or state is still higher than if you hadn't conditioned it. So if you think about someone that is really deconditioned, really out of shape, really not strong. And then in your head, think of like Hercules, right? Like really strong, amazing, super fit, can run 1,000,000,000 miles, all the things. And so these two people get sick or something. Let's just pretend they got ill. Who is still going to be stronger and more resilient? It's still going to be the Hercules, right? Because he's still practiced exercising and his strength and working his muscles. And so his body is still going to be at a higher state. Now, again, when you enter these activities symptom-free and you're like confused about why you got a flare-up, it wasn't because you were ill. But remember, our body is like constantly juggling these things. Like, maybe you came out of a long car drive, your hips are a little achy, and then you walked around for a little while, and now you're feeling better. It doesn't actually mean your hips are like completely, totally better. They could be still in a compromised state, but not giving you signals, right? So we're still talking about this idea of being subpar or not at that superhuman day. So when you're working on your exercise and your endurance and your strength, your subpar is going to be higher than where it was if you were less fit, less conditioned, less strong. So working on your strength in addition to that MAT is really what's going to help boost you up so that your barriers for breakdown are further away from the state where your body lives.
That's exactly right. MAT will help get you back to baseline, all right? And that's a really important place for many, many people to be. Then you start to add in all the other stuff, and that's what allows you to build more and more margin above your baseline and really raise your floor. And so it's like, okay, cool. Like with MAT, you get all your muscles turned back on. You get your brain and muscles communicating the way that they need to communicate, so you can access your muscles in the ways that you need to access them, everything like that. And that's fantastic. And we also need to make sure that the margin, the physical the physical ability that you have it far exceeds what's being asked of you for the activities that you're doing or what you're doing throughout your day. And so the way to then go about doing that, like you're saying, is through your strength training, making sure your conditioning's up, everything like that. That just builds more and more margin from your baseline or your even like your basement floor, so to speak, and what is being asked or required of you throughout the day.
So if you're struggling with this, this common activity that you want to be doing more of, or, it's something in your day and you are, getting flare-ups from it, these are the 2 steps we want you to take. We want you to be getting some regular muscle activation techniques. Something in your body, something in your system is off. You need to get that assessed and bring all that back up to speed and back up to par. Something has gotten flared up because there's something already living in your muscle system, an imbalance or a compensation that you just highlighted when you went golfing or gardening the last time. But a second step here is going to be getting your body's level higher, getting its strength higher, getting its conditioning higher, getting its mobility higher, right? All these things are going to take you further away from that line of breakdown. So even on the days that you are feeling less than perfect, less than ideal, or days that your body is less than ideal and you don't even realize it, that your activities are less likely to flare you up because you're entering with a baseline of strength that's higher than it was before. So make sure you're getting in regular resistance training. Of course, we always are talking about our 4 Exercise for Life principles, which is the way to ensure you're getting all the good stuff from your exercise and way less of those negative stuff, because we know that the exercise piece is what's going to boost your system to the next level.
Exactly. So if you're hearing this right now and you're interested in starting to take action on what we're talking about, that's exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation in Schaumburg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques. So all you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com, click the big green button that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. Well, thank you for your time, your attention, everybody. We always appreciate your eyes on YouTube, your ears on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you consume our content. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a rating and review, it always means the world to us when you do. We are wishing you a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.